Hello everyone and welcome to a new Mish Strategies Middlegame show. This is Material Imbalances number 2. Last week we chilled out with this topic, material imbalances, meaning positions where we have seen, for instance, few pieces for a queen. That was the last game that I was suggesting. And also the beautiful rook sacrifices by Veselin Topalov and Vladimir Kramnik. So those were the trending games, I call them, that they were played just basically a weekend a few days ago. You have seen them, I'm sure you have seen them. If you have not been here with us last week, you can check it on YouTube. Somehow the video has sound issues. The second half of the video on YouTube is really weird. It's out of synchronization and we have no idea why it happened, because the live show seemed to be working. So if you were here live during the session, then I think you were able to listen to it. Now on YouTube, the second half is just not possible to understand why it is so bad. We cannot upload the video once again because it was a live session. So no idea why it happened. I hope that this time it won't work. It will work. It won't happen, because I want you to be able to watch this on YouTube as well if you cannot watch it right now on Saturday at 5 Central European time. So the topic, as I said, is material imbalances. Let's bring up a chessboard because we will need that. By the way, do you realize how funny this green screen is? Because it makes, I feel like I'm cut out of paper, and it has some kind of a green shine around you. Looking weird, but I hope that everything sounds normal and at least you see the chessboard this way. Yeah, this way chessboard. So you see the name on the board already. That is Tigran Petrosyan, or as his full name says, Tigran Vartanovich Petrosyan, the 9th world champion and one of my favorite chess world champions. I think you can understand why he's one of my favorites. By playing style. I'm a strategy, I love positional play. You know that when we discuss these stuff with Sopiko, that the kind of players, the kind of style that she loves and the kind of style I support. So obviously Petrosyan is one of my favorites. And if we talk about material imbalances, that there has to be a full session about Petrosyan. Because Petrosyan is famous for one thing, definitely. Famous for many things, but if you think of material imbalances and Petrosyan, what comes to mind? This is a quick question, so I'll go to the chat and see if somebody knows it. Petrosyan, material imbalances. What is the relation between those two? Oh, Thomas says that he has seen the house where he was born. How lucky you are. Wow, nice. Yeah, this is once again ghost mode, Giovannis is saying. I have no idea what is this effect besides the green stuff around me. It also looks kind of grayish. And it's funny because the XSplit settings are the same that I usually use, and now it looks different, but you know how it works with me. I have no idea why it is happening. And I see the answer by Miss Hat 2000 or Mishat 2000, exchange sacrifice. Tigran Petrosyan is the most famous world chess champion for a kind of sacrifice, a trademark sacrifice, we could call it the exchange sacrifice, and he sacrificed exchanges in so many games. So today we will see 2 of these games, but please, if you enjoy watching Petrosyan's games, then find the rest of his games with exchange sacrifice. If you Google Petrosyan exchange sacrifice, you will surely find many other games, and I love all of them. I just had to pick 2 for today, but this is such a typical Petrosyan play, sacrificing an exchange, and for many reasons. Sometimes he sacrificed for the defense, sometimes he sacrificed to create passed pawns, sometimes he sacrificed to create a monster knight in the center of the board. So he had many different reasons for sacrificing an exchange. I will not tell you which ones we are going to see today, but let's jump in and start with this game against Vlastimil Hort from the year 1970 at the European Team Championship. It is the French defense, my beloved French defense. We are playing with the black pieces, and once again, try to imagine it. Somehow this board cannot be flipped, so we are playing with the black pieces. The opening we will not care about, even though I would love to talk about it, but this is a middle game show. So let's just go through this move very quickly. You know that in the French, this is the bad bishop, the c8 bishop. So black wants to exchange it. He does it. And what happened later, after the exchange of this bishop, in general, black plays on the queen side and white on the king side. You can obviously see that. Look at this rook maneuver, rook h3, rook g3, trying to attack with h6. And actually this move, in this very moment, if Petrosian wanted, he could have prevented h6 by pushing h6 right now. But he didn't want to prevent this move. He was not afraid of it because he saw something. He envisioned already what was going to happen a couple of moves later and why we are watching this game. So after h6, first he went knight dc6. Now the question is, what happens if white takes on g7? So imagine rook takes g7 check, you take back, you have to, and then pawn takes h7. How do you evaluate this position, and what would black do in this position? That's the first question. I wonder if my time to think is here. I'm afraid not, so I will have to get that while you are thinking. So I was not the last person using the studio, and that means that my beautiful time to think is gone. Let me try to edit while you are thinking, but I'm paying attention to the chat, so once somebody says the solution, I will stop doing tech stuffs. Where is my time to think? Add media. I hope that I can find it. Yeah, it's just a useful stuff because then you don't have to be looking at me while you are thinking, and I'm doing all sorts of weird stuffs. So yeah, I think it's just bothering if I'm there. Where is my time to think? Please don't tell me that it was deleted. Where is it? T H. That is still Gibraltar. No luck so far, but I don't see solutions yet. So guys, what would you play in this position with black? It's not that difficult. What would you play? First of all, you should have 3 candidate moves, and which one would you play? Oh, and just because we have mentioned the exchange sacrifice, it doesn't mean that you have to sacrifice an exchange right now, all right? So just think of a normal move. Okay, I give up. I don't see it. You know what? Let's put there the Tata Steel logo. This I can see. I'm hidden by the poster of Tata Steel chess. You know that I was working there, so of course I have great memories about the tournament. And Gibraltar is another great chess festival. So yeah, this is our time to think today. And I see some of the solutions already, so let's discuss it. Yes, rook takes d4. So in this position, what you need to realize is that, of course, we can take back on g7 if we want to, but why to rush with this capture? Whenever you have the possibility of capturing 2 or more pieces or pawns, make sure that you compare those pawns before you capture them. So which one is more important for you right now? It would be great to eliminate the d4 pawn. First we captured this pawn, and then the g7 pawn. It's not gonna go away. It's very difficult for white to actually defend this pawn. So either king takes g7 next move, or if you need to, you can bring the queen to capture this pawn. The point is that the central pawn is much more important, and now you have a beautifully placed knight on d4, supported by the c4 rook. None of these pieces can be kicked out. I mean, yeah, white can go c3, but it doesn't have you would jump around anyway. So this is a bad position. He has to protect the d4 pawn or threaten with something more important than a pawn, and that's what Horde did. Knight h5. And now once again I would like you to think, because it looks like we are in trouble. Are we in trouble? What is the threat? First of all, detect the threat, and then tell me, how would you react? Are we scared of this threat? What can we do in order to prevent it or to face it? Next move. Let's bring up this beautiful Tata Steel logo. Good job, everybody. It's not an easy position, and if we don't know that this was played by Petrosian and he was going for an exchange sacrifice, then we might just think that black is losing. The threat of knight f6 is a huge threat, about to win our queen, and at the same time he's threatening to take on g7, either with the rook or with the knight. None of them are pleasant. So yeah, how can you prevent both? You can't really prevent both. But what was the idea of Petrosian with this whole rook c4 and allowing white to push h6 is that he will keep the position closed by pushing g6, and when the knight jumps to f6, he just takes it. And this is how it goes. He has just given up a rook for a knight. There are no pawns for it, just a knight for the rook. Now, even this e7 knight is hanging, so he has to move the knight. But this position, believe me or not, is roughly equal. So he's an exchange down for no pawns, for no attack. And the position, also evaluated by the engine, is 0-0-0. That means that this could be played for 3 possible results. Anybody can win this game because it is such a mess. But I would pick black. Tell me, how do you see this position? Why do you think that here, with the exchange down, we have enough compensation as black? So what are the factors that make this position unclear and not worse for black? It's time to think about it with the Tata Steel poster. Brilliant job once again, guys. You are working greatly as a team. So all the comments mentioned in the chat right now on Chess24 are very instructive. Let me read out some of them. Fuxia says almost all white pawns are hanging. That is very true. So even though we don't have pawns, just the knight for the rook, it's very likely that in the next moves we will win a pawn or two. So that's great in terms of material. Also, Mishat is saying that king f7 can be played soon, and then the f6 pawn will be hanging. That's very well observed. The d4 pawn is hanging right now. AA11001100 is saying that white has so little to work with. Black owns the c5, and the knights will be stronger later on. That is once again a very wise thought. So even though white has one more rook on the board, he has got no fires, no open fires for the rooks. That is something so important. The rooks need open fires, and this is a basic thought, but we need to constantly remind ourselves that this position has no open fires. It's that simple. Thanks to black's pawn structure. I saw many of you praising the black pawn structure. He has a very healthy pawn chain, and even more importantly, he is controlling the only semi-open file, the c5. So black has a rook on c4, and white's rooks are not even close to being placed on a semi-open file or about to open a whole file for those rooks. It's not happening. It is very difficult for white to envision a position where he can actually open one of the files. So if you don't have open files, it already means that, well, you have a rook, but how will you take advantage of it without open files? It's not really useful. Also, you know that closed positions favor a minor piece that is called a knight. So we have learned about this when we studied the good knight. We had some sessions about good knights. I mean the piece on the chessboard. So the good knight, it's almost always a closed position when you see a beautifully powerful knight. The monster knight, that sometimes we call it. So the knight when there's an outpost. In this case, for instance, imagine you could bring your knight to e4. It's not an outpost yet because it can be chased away by f3, but still, imagine placing the knight on e4. That knight would be stronger than any of the rooks in this position because that knight would be doing a lot and the rooks are not doing anything. Also, the other knight is useful. It is attacking the central pawn of white. We can anytime take this bishop if we are worried about the bishop. So the black knights are very useful and the white rooks are not doing anything. And it's not only about right now, but in general, you can't see a plan for white to open the position, and that is the problem. That is the main problem. Another problem that I have seen you guys mentioning is the king on e1. He can castle queenside, but well, it's not the safest place. So yeah, those are the factors that make this position unclear. And I think that now that we have sacrificed the exchange, I'm going to make myself bigger. I don't know why, but I feel like I'm so am I not so small? Like, okay, I can't do it. Oh, what am I doing? No, I'm spoiling the whole setup. Anyway, I know there's a way to make this bigger. Next time I will try it. So let's move on, because in this position, a mistake was made. c3 had to be played. You have to hang on to this d4 pawn. That's a crucial pawn. But he did not. White went queen d2. And he's giving up the d4 pawn because he thinks that then the position is opening up and maybe he can hang on to the f6 pawn instead. But it was not a good choice. This was captured, of course, and after rook d3, black didn't want to exchange rooks, and that is something important. When you are on exchange down, in general, you do not want to trade rooks. Why? The reason is that if you have a rook and the opponent has two rooks, well, you both have rooks. But imagine we take the rooks off the board, the d4 and the d3 rooks. The only person with a rook is white. And that means that his rook becomes more powerful because that is the only rook on the board. So in general, not always, but in general, you do not want to exchange rooks with an exchange down. And in this position, maybe this is the exception. You could take this so that you destroy the pawn structure, but anyway, rook g4 is a great move as well, so I don't want to be like going always for the very best option of the engine. Just have a look at this position in general. The knight is coming, the knight is heading towards e4, we said before, but in this position it's not e4 where the knight is heading to, it's c4, and that is an outpost. You know that an outpost is a weak square in the opponent's camp where you can place a piece, preferably a knight, and that piece cannot be chased away because there are no pawns, there's no b2 pawn, there's no d2 pawn that could attack this piece. He can only take it with a rook in this case because he doesn't even have a light squared bishop, he doesn't have another knight. So as soon as we can jump onto c4 with the knight, it's impossible to kick that knight away from the c4 square. Of course, white is trying to bring his heavy pieces, he's trying to defend his pawns, but well, this time we jump to e4 because after that you can jump to c5. This position is just so curious because, as we said, we have a knight, now a knight and a pawn for the rook, which is still, in theory, not enough material. That's 4 points and the rook is 5. We all know that. But as the position is so close, you can just maneuver around. So there is no direct way. There's no direct win. I mean, black is better in this position, but there's no direct way of winning this position. He didn't sacrifice an exchange because he saw a forced winning line. He sacrificed it because it was a positional sacrifice. And now he has a positional advantage. So it's gonna take like 20-30 moves until he wins, because what he has to do is to improve his position step by step, and that's what you should observe. So observe how Petrosyan step by step, move by move, will be improving his position, progressing. And white, just have a look at white's position and see if you see any progress in white's camp. So this is what black is doing. He's shuffling around with his pieces. He's trying to find the best setup, but with every move, he is making an improvement. Now expanding on the queen side and bringing the knight back to the center. So you can do this because the position is closed and white is not threatening anything. So let white suffer by not being able to improve his position. Just step by step, coming a little bit closer, improving a little bit each and every piece, move by move. Now the c2 pawn was hanging, so this c1 rook, such a passive and sad piece. And there we go. Now we are expanding in the center as well. So not only on the queen side, but pushing the pawns in the center, and the f6 pawn will just fall. Any moment you can take that pawn. And d4. So suddenly you see that these pawns are becoming an issue, and this is the moment after knight takes f6. This is the moment when we have material equality on the board, a knight and 2 pawns for the rook, and the position is completely winning for black. So once again, this position is winning now because white is still unable to improve his position, and black will be just pushing those central pawns and improving his pieces all the time. So there's just no way that white can prevent this, and that is such a terrible feeling when you play a position where you have nothing to play for. So white has no counterplay. Of course black has to be precise, but unless he blunders, this game is won. So let's see how it is won. You have pushed the central pawns, then you bring back the knight. I love how he's shuffling this knight around. So the c6 knight was always on c6, but this knight, the other knight, has gone through so many squares. He's shuffling the knight around, trying to find the best square for it. And now after queen g5. So this is the first moment when white is actually, well, not threatening something. So the queen in itself will not threaten mate, of course, but this queen is suddenly active. What do you think that Tigran Petrosyan, the 9th world champion, did when he saw this queen on g5? Do you think that he was happy that his opponent has finally an active piece? Do you think that he did something in order to make him not have that piece? Let's see if you can think like Petrosyan. What would you play here? Alright, this was actually a difficult one, so no trouble if you haven't realized, if you haven't managed to discover the move that Petrosian played. I saw many great ideas. So of course, you can think of a queen trade if you want, because if this queen scares you on g5, then you can say, alright, I'm gonna swap queens with queen e7. I also saw the suggestion knight f6, but there's one move that I think nobody would normally play because it's not a natural move. Knight to c7. So of course the knight on c7 is not doing anything, but the next move, the next move is knight e6. And there you go. The queen will have to abandon the g5 square. And that's what he wanted, that's what he did. So white has one active piece and he doesn't even allow that piece to stay where it is. Such a tough opponent, right? Not even a single chance for counterplay. He was not calculating rook takes c2 or something direct. He just wants the queen to leave g5 and then he will win. He's not in a rush. Knight e6. The queen had to move and now he's expanding even further. So there's no direct win, there's no e3, d3 winning. Even if you could push that, white to rush. So don't open the long diagonal, of course, because that's the only blunder we could commit. If we push the d pawn, and with the queen on h4, queen f6, we will be lost if we do that. So that is a no-no. Then you shouldn't push the e-pawn as well. And so he decided that, yeah, he can expand on the queen side. There's always a way he finds to improve the position. Even if he cannot expand in the center, he finds another way to progress. And that is so beautiful about this game, that with every move, literally every move, he's making a progress. And well, rook d1 here gives up the c2 pawn, but that is basically a last try by white. If, for instance, he goes queen g3, then finally we can push d3 because of the pin, and next move f4 and even e3 can come, and this is completely lost. So white is basically running out of moves. You want to keep the queen on h4, you want to keep the rooks where they are, you just can't handle everything, and black is expanding on the queen side, so he doesn't even bother if he's not winning right now. He can do anything. He can bring the knights back to the center. Now this knight is the one I would be bringing to e5 and so on. So he has many ways to keep on improving his position, and white doesn't. He doesn't have a plan, so he decided to give up the c2 pawn and finally have an open file for his rook. That's why he sacrificed the pawn. And finally, he's almost threatening something. He has an active rook. But after d3, just see how this knight from e6 is covering every important square. So there's no rook c7. White goes rook a6. And now, last task, how to prevent white's threat and make him resign. This is a quick task, so let's bring up the poster. Good job, everybody! Yes, queen c1 is one of the solutions. You give a check, and then with another check you force the trade of queens, and you are winning because the d-pawn will promote. So this position is winning, and the other move that is winning is what Petrosian played. He just went queen d4, saying that, once again, he controls all the key squares. So this is once again beautiful, how he's controlling the a7 square, And there's just no way that you can threaten anything with the rook, because he is also controlling the c7 square. You cannot go to b6, you cannot go to d6, and this is where Hort resigned. Now, you might wonder, so why not rook b6 instead of rook a6, and then you threaten rook b7 check? But that would have dropped the rook. So that was the simple reason for that. I see that, let me see the handle. Iron Man has asked in the chat, how much of this was calculation and how much was intuition? I'm pretty sure that this was almost all intuition. Of course, you always need to calculate a bit, at least. But the moment where he sacrifices, so this was the way he did it. He went rook c4, and in this position, he for sure knew that he was going to sacrifice an exchange, because this is forced after knight c6. Knight h5, he has to give up the rook. And in this position, there's not much to calculate. All you see is that the d4 pawn is hanging and the f6 pawn is vulnerable. So that is all I believe that he had to evaluate, that he has enough compensation because of these factors. And that is not calculation, that is chess understanding. So he had a very deep chess understanding, and he understood that this position is at least unclear, if not better for black, because of the reasons that we have already mentioned. So I hope that you found this a very instructive game. We have one more game to see. By the way, it was from the year 1970. I believe I said it at the beginning of the show, but if you did not hear it, the game was from 1970. You can find it in the database. And the next game is from 1969 against Boris Spassky. You know that Petrosian was the 9th world champion and Spassky the 10th, so they played against each other in several matches. The first one, the one in 1966, Petrosian managed to defend his title, but this one in 1969, he unfortunately lost his title, but not because of the game that we are going to see. This is a game that he won at the match where he lost his world champion title. So he's once again playing with the black pieces, and we're gonna skip the opening very quickly. It was a Indian, and let's just go to the middle game. So the position from which I want to be talking, if you want to go through the opening slower, check the game in the database, Spassky Petrosian from the year 1969. This is a typical plan for black. You want to play a c6 or c5, so you need to prepare that pawn push and expand on the queen side. That's why you have pawn majority. After bishop b2, c6 of course was played, and here after queen b3 you might think that black has an isolated d5 pawn, he has a vulnerable b6 pawn, and that is true. But there's a pawn that's even more vulnerable, and that's called the a4 pawn. So look at this position after queen d7. You cannot protect this pawn unless you go rook a1. And when you have to play moves like rook a1, defend the pawn with a rook, that is not a good sign. That doesn't mean that you are in a better position. And if he had taken the b6 pawn, then he could have resigned 2 moves later because his queen is trapped. So yeah, not a good idea either. He played rook a1, but as I said, this is a bad sign. Black is better in this position, and he expands further on the queen side by pushing b5. If this is captured, we take with the bishop, because you don't want to keep this bishop on the board, right? Look at the pawns. Your pawns are on light squares. You don't want the light square bishop. You want that bishop away. And so this position, you can even exchange queens, and it's not like a huge advantage. I'm not claiming that black is winning, but black is better because he has a passed pawn, he has more active pieces. And where is white's pawn? Where is white's passed pawn? How can he create a passed pawn? He has a pawn majority on the king side, or in the center basically. But it's so difficult to create a passed pawn from that, while black already has a passed pawn, a beautiful knight on e4, a better bishop on d6, and better placed rook. So that is the reason why this position is better. But this is a different story. There's no exchange sacrifice. So the game continued with a5. And here, Believe it or not, but Petrosian and bishop b7, because he already envisioned something that will ring a bell to you. He likes this move. I think he likes this move in general. He played this move in so many of his games. This is another trademark of Petrosian besides the exchange sacrifice. The way he sacrifices the exchange. So what do you think he wants after bishop b7? Not right now, but in general. Why do you think that he will sacrifice an exchange? I think you can see that coming. Not right now. Don't go crazy. Just because we want to sacrifice an exchange, it doesn't mean that we have to do it right now. You need to have a reason, a good reason for sacrificing. So don't sacrifice just yet, but you might see it coming. So after knight e5, he goes queen d8 and queen h4. And this is a very important move because he wants white to weaken his castle. So you're threatening queen f2. The h2 pawn will be also hanging after f6. White has to go g3. And with that move, he is weakening the light square. So this is a reason, it's becoming a reason for you as black to sacrifice an exchange on the... Which square do you think that he wanted to sacrifice an exchange? You can be thinking about that because he's not doing it right just now. Spassky chased away the knight from e4, but it has a price. So we had a great knight on e4. It was a very strong piece. After f3 and h4, it's not there anymore. But if you have to push those pawns in front of your king, it is weakening your king. So we are starting to have a real reason to sacrifice an exchange. f4 was played in after f6. Of course, we want to chase the knight away from e5. Knight d8. Now, where do you think this knight is heading to? Real quick, where is the knight heading to? Tata Steel poster. Alright, let's discuss this. One suggestion that I really like is to go towards g4. So if you look at the pawn chain of white, you realize that he has placed his pawns in a weird way, right? This is weird. It's not very useful because it means that you have holes in your pawn structure. Now I can't take away the colors. Managed. This square and this square. These two are basically super weak. So if you could place your knight on g4, for instance, that's a great outpost. But an even better outpost is on e4. That's in the center. That would be a monster. So g4 is great, and maybe we will actually place the knight there. But another square where you must be heading towards is the e4 square knight. You might think that that's too far. That takes a lot of moves. But remember, this is a closed position. In a closed position, you have time to maneuver. There's only one open file, the C file, and you control it with your rook, so you can actually maneuver your knight towards e4 by placing your knight on f7, moving the bishop away in some position. I don't know where exactly, but at some point you might move the bishop away, jump to d6, and from there to e4. And if you are on d6, you also want maybe to jump to c4. That's another great square. Let's see what happened in the game. because this is a general idea, of course. After knight f7, knight d2, ta-da-ta-dum-ta-dum! There goes the trademark of Petrosian. What did he play here? You have 3, 2, 1 second to tell me what is the move in this position. Of course it is rook c4. So yeah, this is basically what he has been preparing for the whole time. He played bishop b7 to open the c5 for the rook, and then he weakened white's king side by playing queen h4 and provoking all those pawn pushes. So after white has weakened the light squares in the king side, on the king side, there's a huge reason to sacrifice an exchange, because if you take this, how do we take back? B takes or D takes? Quick. 3, 2, 1. D takes. Of course, because you want the long diagonal. That is the reason why you sacrifice an exchange. In this position, he sacrificed an exchange because he wants to open the long diagonal. He wants your king to be very weak. You might bring the queen towards e4, you might bring it towards e6, h3, you might bring the knight still, well, not right now, to g4, but in general you have those routes for the knight. This position, once again, is more than enough compensation for the piece. Actually, if you turn on the engine in this position, it will say that black is winning. He is winning. He only has a bishop for the rook and he's winning. So try to figure out why. Why is that? What are the factors? We have mentioned some of them, but let's just sum it up very quickly. Let's sum up why this position is winning for black. Nothing concrete. And we will have a special guest to help us with this position. Valentina, come with me. Do you know what's the topic today? It's about exchange sacrifice. If I tell you exchange sacrifice and a chess world champion, who do you think this session is about? Who was famous for exchange sacrifices?
It's Petrosian.
Petrosian, well done. She was not here with me, so this was not prepared. Valentina is 8 years old and she finished 5th at the European Championship under 8. So soon you will see her here on Chess24 as an author. Well done, Valentina. Thank you for joining me. Yeah, soon she will replace me because she will be a lot stronger than I am. So guys, Valentina is your future teacher. I just have a few more years and then she will be stronger already. So the position, we were discussing the factors before, and we can say basically many of the previous reasons, many of the reasons we have mentioned in the previous game. The position is closed, there are weak squares. In a closed position with weak squares, the minor pieces are better because where are the open files for the rooks? That is always the first reason you should look for. If you have rooks, you need open files, basic stuff, but once again it works. There is no open file and that is a huge factor. So white's king is weak. There are holes in his pawn structure. He has no open files for his rooks. We also have a passed pawn on c4, by the way. I don't know if you realize, but this is a passed pawn, a protected passed pawn supported by another passed pawn. So we can even win in an endgame. It's not only about giving mate. We did not sacrifice the rook for giving mate, but we might give mate if we can. We will, of course. So it's very bad to take this. You cannot. You should not take this rook on c4. This is the position, rook c4. you better not touch that piece. So we will see that for many moves, this rook will be hanging on c4 and white is not capturing it. He doesn't want to capture it. Of course he doesn't want to, because you know it's bad. So instead he tries to exchange bishops and such. He does that, but by placing the bishop somewhere else, we have actually freed the d6 square for the knight. Now the knight can jump to e4 or c4 or f5 later on, any square. You are basically just improving your position once again, little by little. Rook e1 was played, and now f5, because you, as a person who is about to sacrifice an exchange, what you always have to make sure of is that you keep the position closed. So rook e1 is threatening e4. Whether immediately or a few moves later, it's not likely that it's immediately, because this rook could be hanging in some positions and such. But anyway, Petrosian didn't even want to calculate whether e4 is working here for white or not. Why bother when you can push f5 and forget about e4 forever? At least that's what you tell your opponent. You will never push e4. So the rook went back to a1 and knight e4 was played. Maybe here it was even better to play queen c7. But anyway, that's just in bracket. Today's topic is not that, whether we should jump to e4 with the knight or not. In general, I told you that if it's a weak square, try to keep it weak and don't occupy it with a pawn. But here, Petrosian's plan was different. He just wants to give up that rook so badly. So he doubles rooks on the c file in order to force his opponent take that rook finally. And so he did. He did it before there could be even all the heavy pieces of black on the c file. So he takes it, and of course we take back with the d pawn. You don't take back with the b pawn, that would be lost. So d takes, very important. You're opening the position for the bishop. It's not a long diagonal anymore that you have, but still, if you can place your bishop on d5, that completely blocks the position. So any move in this position, let's say rook c2, you go bishop d5 and you make sure that everything is closed. You keep everything closed. You dominate every possible trade of pawns. So there is just no way to break through. You are controlling all the breakthrough squares. There's no way to open vice for the rooks. And this is how you should play with an exchange down. So seeing this coming, Spassky went d5 because he wants an open file. And he says, okay, I give up a pawn, but at least I have an open file. It would not have been a bad idea, but it doesn't work. Doesn't work in time, because after rook d1, black went c3, and you don't have time to double rooks on the d file. So even though he has an open file, he cannot take advantage of it because of this monster pawn on c3. Rook c2 was played, and now queen h3, because that's the other factor. The king. This is not hanging because you are blundering your queen. Ouch. So after queen h3, well, it's completely lost. Not only because we have this beautiful passed pawn and another one could be joining him, but the weakness of the white king. Few more moves were played. Queen g4 now threatening from f3. Check. He took the pawn. Now you have even more pawns and the bishop. So he goes back now to the queen side because yes, we have a passed pawn, but we need to support it. In order to promote this pawn, you need company for that pawn. He is preparing to push b4, b3, c2, b2, queen. That is the plan. Rook f1, b4, f6, trying to create counterplay, but it's just not enough. b3 was pushed anyway, and after rook f2, he didn't care about white's threats. He is threatening with a check or capture, but it's not a huge deal. So he goes c2, after queen c1, e3. All the pawns are going against white. You can promote any of those pawns basically. f7, and of course you go king f8. You don't blunder. After rook f5, b2, and it's lost. Spassky could have resigned in this position because you will promote your pawn no matter what. He took on b2, and after c1, he took on g7. I think that was just the final final joke, mainly because the only way you can blunder is by playing king h6 and blundering mating 1, but any move, king f8 or king h8, both are winning. There's nothing that white has here. Also, if he didn't sacrifice his queen after c1, but if you take on c1, takes, you can take everything. You even win the bishop on d5, but now the third pawn promotes. So he had 3 amazingly powerful passed pawns in the end for the exchange, but it started with just a single bishop for the exchange, and he was aiming to sacrifice this exchange for so long. He placed the rook on c4, remember? He placed it there, and then he was just waiting for white to capture it, and since white did not capture it, he just kept on playing until he could force white to do something about the c file or let him occupy it with all his heavy pieces. So white had no choice in the end but capture this rook. I hope that you like this session about the exchange sacrifice of Petrosian. As I said, there are so many other masterpieces by Petrosian. I could not show more to you today because we have run out of time, and there's another show coming up right now, so I need to leave the studio, and David Larino, Spanish Grandmaster, will be coming here to play Banter Blitz in Spanish, so challenge him. He's a very, how to call his style, very creative Grandmaster, so his playing style is not the traditional positional Grandmaster style, but he plays often very rare openings, and he has his unique style. So if you want to play a Grandmaster who goes very creative and crazy often, then challenge David Larino. He's coming now to the studio. And I say goodbye to you for this week, and next week I will be back with more examples of material imbalances. Make sure you check out more Petrosian games. Find in Google Petrosian exchange sacrifices. I will see you next week. Bye bye.